How would it feel to feel worthy of love? How would it feel to be grateful for life? How would it feel to be worthy of abundance? I'm going to teach my body emotionally what this feels like before the manifestation of the event. That you're not waiting for your life to change to feel worthy. You're actually changing your life by becoming worthy. You're generating abundance. You're generating love. When you truly begin to elevate your emotional state, your body is so objective that it actually believes that it's living in a whole new environment before the environment changes. In other words, the body's believing it's in that new future. You're no longer in lack or separation, so you're no longer looking for the event to take away that feeling of lack or separation. So then you're not looking for it, you feel like it's already happened. Get ready, because that's when your life begins to change.
I think the most beautiful and powerful thing in the world is a repetitive thought, but sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world is a repetitive thought.
Absolutely.
And we think about the most beautiful things we create is because we're obsessed with this new idea and this new thought that we want to build something, but at the same time, we know countless people who they have a thought every day that says, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I don't deserve love in my life. If someone's having a negative, repetitive thought, specifically around self-worth, what they believe they deserve in love, where do they start with that thought?
Well, we think primarily 90% of the time we think the same thoughts as we thought the day before. The challenge with that is the thought that you keep thinking over and over again becomes a belief. And nerve cells that fire together wire together. So the more nerve cells fire, the more they develop long-term relationships and the more hardwired they become. The more hardwired they become, the more automatic they are. The more automatic they are, the more unconscious they become. So the process of change really requires becoming conscious of your unconscious thoughts, which means just because you have that thought doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. If you have that thought and you accept it, you believe it, you surrender to it without analyzing it, that thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, which will create the same experience, which then will produce the same emotion. Those same emotions then drive our very same thoughts. In time, our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry, our hormones, and even our gene expression stays the same because we're the same. So in the process of change, when you come up against that unconscious belief and you make it conscious, most people get uncomfortable when they confront that thought. And they're stopping an automatic process. And the body, which has been conditioned to be the mind because it's doing something over and over again, that's a habit, is craving the experience because it wants the emotion associated with it, right? So the thought of being unworthy produces the feeling of being unworthy. That feeling then, when the person feels unworthy, tends to cause the person to think more unworthy thoughts. And it only takes a thought and a feeling, an image of yourself and an emotion, a stimulus and response, and you can condition the body to memorize that behavior and that emotional state better than the conscious mind. So the moment we inhibit that thought, or the moment we become conscious of it and we no longer accept it, there's a biological craving that takes place in the body because the body has been conditioned to be the mind. So the body starts influencing the mind to think more corresponding thoughts equal to that feeling. So here comes the assault. You're not only unworthy, you're everything else that goes along with that feeling. And this is where people have to make up their mind if they truly want to change. Because if you decide to confront that thought and make a different choice, get ready, because you're going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. And there's going to be some uncertainty because you're stepping out of familiar territory. Now, you're stepping out of the known and you're stepping into the unknown. Now, this is really when you leave the bleachers and you get on the playing field, because the brain immediately looks around in its environment to see if anything's changing because you're changing, and you see that nothing in your world is changing because you actually haven't fully changed yet. So the moment we look for evidence in our life and we don't see it, sooner or later, most people accept that thought, which leads to the same choice, which creates the same behavior, which creates the same experience, that produces the same feeling. And then they say, oh, this feels right to me. No, that feels familiar, because you've just returned back to the known self. I think that when people truly want to make up their mind to change and they become so conscious of those unconscious thoughts, they would never go unconscious to them again. That's the moment the body is being reconditioned to a new mind. If you inhibit that choice, that leads to that habit or that behavior. A habit is when you've done something so many times, the body knows how to do it better than the brain. Now you're stopping the body from being on its automation, on autopilot. And if the body's craving the feeling of unworthiness and you're stopping the body from feeling that way, and you're aware in your life how you speak, you're aware in your life how you're feeling, and you're checking in, you're saying, do I really want to feel this way? This is that river of change where you're going from the old self to the new self. So it makes sense then. If those principles in biology work in that way, they could actually work in our favor. So if you said, okay, I'm going to sit down for a few minutes, I'm going to become so conscious of my unconscious self, my unconscious personality, that victory today would not be going unconscious to those thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. Okay, let me get so familiar with them that I don't go unconscious. Okay, I got that down. What thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? And if a belief is a thought that you keep thinking over and over again, with intention and with attention, you'll switch on that prefrontal cortex and assign meaning to the act and start installing new circuits in your brain. If you keep doing it over and over again, it becomes more hardwired, it becomes more automatic, and now you're installing a new belief that you are worthy of love, you are worthy of abundance, you are worthy to heal, whatever that is. That's the thought you do want to believe in. And when it matters the most is when it's the hardest. Because if you don't have the circuitry in place, you'll default back to the old programs, right? So then if you said, how am I going to be in my Zoom calls today? How am I going to be in traffic today? How am I going to be with my ex, my coworkers? And you started thinking about and rehearsing how you were going to act in certain situations. The brain actually doesn't know the difference between the real life experience and what you're imagining. The research on mental rehearsal shows that the brain will look like in time that it's already had the experience and it's vacant of the experience. Now, keep firing and wiring those circuits and you're going to begin to behave that way. So now you're installing circuitry now to use in your life to get your behaviors to match your intentions. If you said, how would it feel to feel worthy of love? How would it feel to be grateful for life? How would it feel to be worthy of abundance? And you said, I'm going to teach my body emotionally what this feels like before the manifestation of the event. You're not waiting for your life to change to feel worthy. You're actually changing your life by becoming worthy. You're generating abundance. You're generating love. You're creating an elevated emotion. Now, our data is so compelling because when you truly begin to elevate your emotional state and you could really lock in, to those elevated emotions, your body is so objective that it actually believes that it's living in a whole new environment before the environment changes. In other words, the body's believing it's in that new future. And if the environment signals the gene, and it does, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, you're actually signaling genes ahead of the environment, and your body will begin to become conditioned to a new mind. Now think about this. If you did that every day, the word meditation literally means become familiar with. You become familiar with your old self. You become familiar with your new self. And you say, I'm not getting up until I feel this feeling. And then you say, I want to be able to bring this feeling up whenever I want. I'm going to keep remembering this feeling over and over again. It only takes a thought and a feeling, an image of the future and emotion, a stimulus and response. You can condition your body to believe it's living in a whole new life. And when you feel the emotions of your future, something amazing happens. You're no longer in lack or separation, so you're no longer looking for the event to take away that feeling of lack or separation. Your body's actually believing it's in the event. So then you're not looking for it. You feel like it's already happened. Get ready, because that's when your life begins to change. And so we've discovered that if you're actually practicing this and you immersed yourself in that experience fully for 7 days, the amount of metabolic and biological changes that will take place in your body will be so significant that your body will actually believe it's living in that future. And yet, most of the people that come to our workshops are literally in a ballroom. There's nothing really exciting happening in the environment, but their body's believing they're living in a whole new life. And so one thought leads to a choice, which leads to a behavior, which creates an experience that produces an emotion. So then new information, new knowledge begins to cause you to think differently. If you can remember that knowledge and begin to make a different choice because you want to experience the truth of that information, you'll have to behave differently. And when the experience occurs and you feel the feeling of your abundance or wealth, I guarantee you're going to continue wanting to make the process of change something consistent in your life.
My definition of addiction is something that you can't stop, right? And most people who struggle from addictions are trying to regulate and alter their internal state. Now, you and I have been hypnotized and conditioned into believing that change happens outside of us. People are looking for something outside of them to change their internal state. It's kind of a Newtonian principle. You wait for your wealth to come to feel abundant. You wait for your healing to occur to feel wholeness. You wait for your success to show up so you feel empowered. You wait for your new relationship to show up to feel love. You're waiting for the event outside of you to happen to change how you feel inside of you. That's cause and effect. And we're conditioned based on consumerism and marketing and programming that that's the way it works. To get something to relieve yourself. And the problem with that is that people begin to confuse true happiness with pleasure, and they're not the same thing. So people who have addictions like that typically have had some very difficult past experiences that have branded them emotionally, and they just don't know how to change. They just don't know. And they're just looking for some relief inside of them so that they can make that feeling go away. So we can become distracted by our external environment for a period of time, But then when you realize that the sports car or the new wardrobe or the vacation or the whatever people do to try to make the feeling go away, the novelty of that thing outside of us wears off because we're trying to re-identify with our environment. When that goes away, the next thing that people do is they look for some immediate change. And so they take a drug. They drink something, they gamble, they watch pornography, and the event outside of them changes their internal chemistry. And the moment they notice that the pain or the emptiness goes away, the moment they feel differently, they look to see what caused it. And this is when the attachment begins. Here's the problem though. The rush of chemical change that takes place, the pleasure centers in the brain, there's a huge release of the pleasure chemicals. And the release, the intensity of those release of those chemicals begins to desensitize the receptor sites in the brain. So as the brain chemicals are released and the receptor sites become desensitized, the next time you gamble, the next time you take the drug, the next time you shop, you need a little bit more the next time. So then what happens is the pleasure centers start to get recalibrated to a higher and higher level. So you're always going to need more to make that feeling go away. Sounds like an addiction to me. And so people get lost because then without the dependency on that external substance, the body, which has become the mind, is craving its relief. And so an addiction really is when the body is the mind. So you may say with your conscious mind, I want to give up drinking, I want to give up pornography, I want to give up gaming, I want to give up over shopping, I want to give it up consciously. But the body has been conditioned from the past subconsciously. And so now the body's the mind. Now, no one's told people that true change can happen within them. And so then when people start to realize that there's a gap between the external world and how they present themselves to the world and their attention on the outer world and their attention on their inner world and how they really feel. And if they're spending the majority of their time looking outside of them for change and they don't want to look at this feeling, all they want to do is make that feeling go away, they're going to wind up in trouble. So true change is when you start looking within and you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. In neuroscience, it's called metacognition. You become aware of your habits and your unconscious behaviors. And you look at those emotions that are connected to past experiences and allow yourself to observe them. So then think about this. If 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are those programmed states, the moment you're observing how you think, how you act, and how you feel, it means you're no longer the program. You're now a consciousness observing the program and you're beginning to objectify your subjective self. You are seeing yourself through the eyes of someone else. Turns out that the size of the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human being, 40% of our entire brain, that's what separates us from all other species. It's the boss, it's the CEO, it's the conscience, it's the creative center. It's what speculates possibilities, it's what learns from its mistakes, it's what has intention, attention. It regulates and controls behaviors and emotional reactions. When your forebrain begins to turn on, when that begins to happen, you are now beginning to become the executive in your life. You're starting to gain more control over your life. If you're living primarily as the body-mind, then the hindbrain is looking for some chemical relief. So by the mere fact that you can begin to observe who you're being means you could modify who you are to do a better job in life. It's difficult because we're breaking out of a biological mold. It's difficult because most people don't know that they have within their reach all the tools to do it. I can tell you that there is a strong majority of people who are still taking the placebo, who are still making their changes. Because we know that, like in a Parkinson's study, you give Parkinson's patients a placebo and more than 50% of them, their intention tremors go away. But if you take those people after they're making 200 times the amount of dopamine by getting a saline injection or an injection of distilled water, they're making their own dopamine, and Parkinson's is a deficiency in dopamine. When they return back to their life, and they see their caregiver and they play chess with their friends and they see their wife or sleep in the same bed or whatever it is, their personal reality is creating their personality, reminding them who they are. Their disease comes back because they're back to the same identity. So we know then...
coming out of drug rehab and going right back into their environment.
Exactly, and that's how strong the environment is. So our students who continue to do the work are still sustaining and producing more changes. Now that's the majority of our students because our students are committed. But we do have students that don't make it. Why? Because we're doing something that is unknown. We're doing something, not everybody is gonna make that. Like not everybody's gonna finish the mile. Not everybody's gonna make the journey to the top of the mountain. You know, it's a journey. And so we ask people then, the ones that have had chronic diseases or conditions, the majority of them, by the way, are still doing exceptionally well. Some of them have had disease return. And what we have them do is measure. Every 3 months or 6 months, you measure. Why? Because this is not about denial. This is about knowing. So the people who have had some conditions return, we ask them to measure, and then we ask them to go at it again. And if their values aren't changing, we ask them to intervene with other medical means or whatever they need to improve. So the ones that have had the healings, though, the majority of them are still doing exceptionally well. Some of them that stop taking the placebo or they lose their job, they lose their mother, they lose their life, and they get stressed, and they go back to their old self. Well, it's a matter of time when we're going to start seeing some of those conditions return.
What happens with human beings is every thought has a frequency. Every thought produces a chemical. So if you keep obsessing about your lack of finances, your lack of time, your lack of energy, and you're taking thought, it's producing a frequency, and that frequency in the form of chemistry is storing that thought emotionally right in your second center. You feel guilty, you feel unhappy. The moment you feel unhappy, then you generate more thoughts equal to that feeling, which makes more chemicals, and you keep taking energy from the brain and storing it in the body. If you react to people in your life and you feel anger, frustration, whether it's traffic, the news, whatever it is, you're drawing from this field, this electromagnetic field, you're tapping that resource and you're making chemistry out of it and the field shrinks. So now, by doing that and living in survival, the body no longer is a magnet. So now you have very little energy in the brain. In fact, 5% of the energy is in the brain, and 95% is stored in the body. Now the body's been conditioned emotionally. So a lot of energy in the body, very little in the brain. We want to move energy back up to the brain. So
What does that do when we move the energy from the body to the brain or the heart?
well, this is a great thing because once it makes it here, it's going up, right? So we do these different meditations and these different techniques to draw that energy right up to the top of the head. Now, when this energy shakes loose and it starts to move, the sympathetic nervous system switches on. And instead of releasing energy out like you're being chased by a predator, that same energy is going up into the brain, and the brain switches on and it goes into these very high frequencies called gamma brainwave patterns. Now the person has an arousal. It's energy that's being released into the brain, and you can only describe it as ecstasy or bliss. So the energy of guilt that was stored from thinking and feeling in the same way releases, and it travels up to the brain and is going back. And when it reaches the brain, what happens? You get more energy in the brain and it begins to produce that external field. So you're beginning to create a field around your body. Well, once the energy is moved, you're going to feel pretty blessed in that moment. In fact,
So we can transfer guilt, shame, insecurities into bliss?
oh my God, yeah, we do it all the time. And the amazing thing is that rush of energy that's moving into the brain is changing the brain's physiology and producing that field. Now you have energy to heal. Now the body is a magnet again. And it's as the energy moves up the spinal cord and it starts passing through those spinal nerves, and there's a lot of dynamics going on in the body. That energy that was once stored in that one of those energy centers that's released is energy to heal, energy to create a new future. You're replenishing your field, and now the body becomes more of a magnet instead of an inert piece of metal with no charge, right? So the person then who's reacting to whatever person or circumstance in their life, the stronger the emotion that they feel towards politics, towards the traffic, towards their girlfriend,
Social
towards their ex,
media,
whatever, the more they're paying attention to it. But where you place your attention is where you place your energy. What you're doing is you're tying up your vital life force. You're giving your power away to that person or that circumstance that you could be using to create a new life with. So when a person's sitting in their meditation, and I love doing this, we just had an event in Marco Island. I'm going to take people further than where they normally go. I know they're going to go, oh, well, I'm done with my meditation. No, you're not done. We're going to take you to that point where that feeling is so in your face and you can't turn on your cell phone. You can't get up and walk away because 1,000 people are not getting up and walking away and you're part of the community. You're sitting in the fire and you have one of two choices. You can let that brain run on programs and hardwired patterns, and the arousal will drive your brain further out of balance, or you'll practice the formula. And as you lower the volume to that emotion, you're going to take your attention off that person or problem, and guess what? Here comes energy back to you. You're taking your power back. And now you're building your field that way. And when that happens, energy starts to move up into the heart. Once it makes it to the heart, it's going to the brain. So we start seeing people, their hearts naturally open up. And all the things they thought they wanted when they came to the event, they no longer want because they feel like they have it. Because they feel like they got the feeling before the experience, so that they feel so whole that they no longer want. And they're not looking for their future anymore. You only look for it when you feel lack. When your body is conditioned emotionally into the future, why would you look for it when it feels like it's already happened? Now this is where it gets weird, because now things start coming to you and you're no longer in need. And when it comes to you, go, oh, here, take it, I don't want it. I just wanted to know that I could create it. And people create a lot of wealth in our events.
Yeah.
And the first thing a lot of people do is they say, I'm buying a cruise for you. I'm buying you your car. Oh, Mom, I'm getting you that house. Why do they do that? Because they're so excited. They feel so amazing. And they're thinking, I could do this again. Why would a person in lack wouldn't give? A person who's abundant would give, because they know how to create. So now the game changes. It's no longer about the self. And you're doing it because that you know that you can create it. So then maintaining that state when you're in love.
Yes.
When you're in love. No, you're not looking for it. You're not looking for it. You would be in lack. When you're in love, there's nothing to do. You're in love. You're the magnet. You are it. And so
you are love.
Yeah. So the events that come into your life would not only be just a reflection of a relationship with someone that you wanted to be intimate with, you would have meaningful, loving relationships that would enhance that feeling. And when it didn't, you would say, ooh, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if this is right for me. You would trust that because you worked really hard to nurture this, to protect it, to grow it, to trust it again, to open up, right? It takes a lot to do this. But we see men in our work. I was on them this week. I never let up on those guys. Big, macho guys. You want to know what courage is? Let's go. Let's open that heart. And when they start cracking open, I mean, we see people heal from colon cancer and from angina and all, just boom, there it is, there it's not. That's what's been stored all down here. Once they open this up and it moves, the body is transforming in that moment. It's the system is informing itself. Information is being restored back into the body. So when you get to that point where when you're in lack and separation, time gets really crazy because you want stuff to happen faster and it feels like it's taking forever. That's because you're in separation. When you're in love and you're connected, you don't want the moment to end. I mean, I had 3 guys over for dinner last night, all these academics. I cooked a meal and a half for these guys, took out great wine. Why? I wanted them to be so caught up in the moment that they forgot. We made a new memory. We had a great experience. And life then is about experiencing it in love. Like, I'm not going to be guilty of what I'm eating or judge what I'm eating if I've cooked a great meal. Let's eat, because the guilt is worse than whatever it is you think is bad for you. So then, when you're feeling those elevated emotions and you're locked in love, then you see life through the lens of love, and there's compassion. Like, you could look at your greatest adversary, the person that threw you under the bus, and you've overcome yourself and you've done the work. You'll look at them and you'll see a part of yourself that you used to be that you no longer are, and you have nothing but understanding and compassion. For them. Like, wow, I feel for that person. They're hurting. They're struggling. I used to be like that, but you're no longer that. People who are in love with themselves will find love in others. People who are happy with themselves will find something that they can connect with. They won't see all the flaws. They'll see some part of them that they want to enjoy. If you practice it, just feeling a little love every day, a little gratitude every day, I can prove to you, I have the research, your immune system is going to be so strong, it's going to be immune to any foreign agent.
With gratitude.
Just 10 minutes, 20 minutes of gratitude a day. What do you got? Not just to think about the things that you're grateful for, but to embrace them emotionally. Why? Because you want to practice feeling that. What's the emotional signature of gratitude? When you're receiving something favorable, you just received something favorable. Something amazing is happening to you, or something amazing just happened to you that surprised you. What do you say? You feel grateful, right? So the emotional signature of gratitude means something amazing just happened to you. Something just happened, or something is literally happening to you. Gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. So if you finish your meditation in gratitude before the event occurs, your body, as the unconscious mind, is believing it's already happened to you.
Receiving,
and you're in the state of receiving. So, and what do you got to lose except your immune system? The worst thing that could happen to you is you'll heal. It's the worst thing that could happen to you.
Yes.
Some people wake up in the morning. Your brain is a record of the past. The first thing they do is they think about their problems. Those problems are memories that are etched in the brain that are connected to certain people, certain objects, certain things at a certain time and place. The moment they wake up in the morning and they think about their problems, they're thinking in the past. Every one of those problems, since we've experienced it, has an emotion associated with it. So then all of a sudden, they start feeling unhappy. The moment they feel unhappy, now the body's in the past, because thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body. So the moment they start feeling those feelings, now their body's in the past. So now they get back and they started off with a clean slate, they didn't feel anything, and then they're like, I'm back to feeling unhappy, okay, I'm back to myself again. So because they'd rather feel unhappy than not feel anything. So naturally, the void of that emotion is influencing, the body's influencing the mind, the brain, to think, so it produces the chemicals for it to feel. Some people just wake up in the morning and they don't feel anything, and then all of a sudden they just look for that feeling. Some people need a thought to do it, some people can just bring up the feeling, right?
Wow.
So some people have emotions that influence thoughts. Some people are more analytical, they have thoughts that influence feelings, but it's a loop, right? It's that cycle of thinking and feeling. Every thought produces a chemical, so if they have an unhappy thought, they feel unhappy. If they have a judgmental thought, it produces chemicals that makes you feel polarized, right? So the stronger the emotions that we feel from the problems and conditions in our life, the more altered we feel inside of us, the more we pay attention to what's causing it outside of us. So if you have an event in your life, an experience in your life that has a strong emotional charge to it, and you don't feel like your normal self, you feel this alarm system switch on, you're gonna narrow your focus on the cause, and the brain's gonna take a snapshot, and that's called a long-term memory, right? So then what people don't know is that every time they think about that event, they're producing the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event was occurring. And
in that moment.
In that moment. So the highly charged event is actually producing the emotion, and the body is so objective that it doesn't know the difference between the real experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that the person is fabricating by thought alone. The body's believing. It's so objective, it's believing it's in the same environmental experience. So the highly charged emotional events, some people think of their ex, and the thought of that person
makes them sick.
Makes them feel out of balance. So all you need is an image and an emotion, a thought and a feeling, a stimulus and a response, and you're conditioning your body emotionally into the past. So now the memories, and this is just not in the brain now, it's in the body, okay? So now, that thought of that person is actually creating a response in the body that's consuming the body's energy for growth and repair, consuming the body's energy to create, because in survival, it's not a time to create. In survival, it's time to run, fight, and hide. So the problem is that it becomes a subconscious program. It's no longer a conscious process. It now is a subconscious process. So now the body has been conditioned into resentment, into unhappiness, into fear, anxiety, whatever it is. So in a sense, the person is making themselves sick by thought alone. Their thoughts are making them sick, literally. So the problem is now the body is conditioned into the past, and it's the mind. The body becomes the mind emotionally. So now all of this energy is stored in the body, and now the person now has to leave their unhappiness and step out into the unknown. They have to get out of the familiar feelings that has defined them. So they'll say, I can't really feel joy, I can't really feel love. And what they're really saying is, I've been conditioning my body emotionally so much into the past that I can't feel anything else other than what I know. The survival chemicals are actually knocking your brain and body out of balance. You're out of balance in that moment. And if you keep doing that, the imbalance is now the new balance. And now you're altered emotionally. Practice getting so present in the moment that you're not anticipating the next moment or trying to predict the future. And you're no longer romancing the emotions of your past. You can find that sweet spot of the generous present moment. The familiar past is the known emotionally. The predictable future is the habituation of autopilot, being unconscious, and programs. Those are both knowns. There's only one place where the unknown exists, that's the present moment. So if you could work with your body to the point that it trusts you enough to feel so safe that you have conquered it in a certain way that it could actually relax into the present moment, and it's not worried about what's going to happen next or what's going on around you, or that you need to eat, you need to pee, you need to move. You got beyond all your drives and you're ready to create. That moment where you're present, if you could begin to work with your heart and start to breathe and start to practice feeling love. In the beginning, it would feel foolish or gratitude. Why would I feel love if it hasn't happened? Well, that's because you've been hypnotized into waiting for your world to change to feel the emotion from the experience. Your body's so objective that it's actually believing it's living in that future in the present moment. And your body now is beginning to change. You are beginning to change your biology to reflect what you're about to experience in your future. So the stronger the love you feel, the more altered you feel inside of you, the more you're going to pay attention to that picture in your mind. Stimulus, response, memory, emotion, thought, and feeling. But now you're remembering your future instead of remembering your past. If you're truly in the present moment and you know exactly what you want, and you begin to teach your body emotion, start practicing opening that heart, it's amazing what happens. On a scan, on a real-time brain scan, when the heart moves into this kind of rhythm, when you're feeling frustration, when you're feeling impatient, when you're feeling resentment, you are stepping on the gas pedal and you're stepping on the brake at the same time, and the heart is pumping against a closed system, and it causes an erratic beat. It becomes incoherent, and energy literally leaves the heart. Now, you no longer believe in your future. You can't put your heart into your future. You can't trust the outcome because there's no energy there. It's being used and consumed somewhere else, so energy is leaving the brain as well. But once energy starts to move into the heart, we've seen this so many times, and it starts to beat in this rhythm, like banging a drum or dropping a pebble in water, pebble after pebble. The heart begins to create a wave of energy right to the brain. And that change in brain wave patterns, that change, that wave is carrying information. And the person starts to get a very clear idea. They see their future very clearly. Now that energy is causing them to move into very coherent alpha brainwave patterns, which is the state of creation. This is when you no longer hear the voice in your head that's talking to you that you listen to and believe is the truth.
I'm not good enough.
Yeah, whatever that is. That's called the
the
default mode. It suppresses the default mode network, and the next thing you know, you start seeing in pictures and images. You start dreaming. And that's the imagination. That's the creative state. So now you start naturally imagining the heart is the creative center. We got to put our heart into our future. It better be open and activated. So now when you start falling in love with your future, oxytocin is released in the brain and in the heart. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals another chemical called endothelial-derived relaxing factor. And just like when your sexual organs get filled with blood because you're aroused, the same thing happens here as it would happen somewhere else. And literally the arteries in the heart and lungs engorge, and now your heart feels full and it's thumping in order, and you're in the present moment.
What is a formula, like a 1 to 2 minute formula, when someone notices, oh, I'm feeling something, and then my thoughts are supporting that feeling, and I'm just staying in this loop? What's the 1 or 2 minute formula that they could just implement in the morning, at night, whenever, to help them?
If I'm truly in the practice every day, and I can cultivate a feeling, not on the spot then, that you're not prepared. Your meditation is the preparation of mind and body for this. So I don't get up from my meditation until I'm in love with life. And why do we close our eyes and do it? Because the environment is so seductive. Why do we sit still and not move? Because you're gonna wanna get up and pee and eat and have a cup of coffee and feel. So now you're telling your body, hey, stay, I'm gonna feed you. Yeah, you're gonna take a shower, you're gonna get coffee, you can play with your cell phone, you can text, you can talk trash, you can do anything you want, but right now, you're not the mind. I'm the mind. And you're gonna sit and stay till I'm done. And when I condition you to the emotions of the future, and I get a very clear image of who I'm going to be this day, and I'm not gonna get up until I feel that way, I guarantee you're gonna come up against all those unconscious thoughts. They're gonna come up right there. I want them to see it. I want them to become so familiar with it, so conscious. If they wouldn't go unconscious, they wouldn't let that thought "I can't" ever slip by their awareness unchecked. They've done the work in the beginning of the day. They suppress those circuits in the brain, and nerve cells that no longer fire together no longer wire together. You're breaking down the old personality.
Ooh.
And so you say, your body wants to get up. I got to pee. I want to have a cup. I want to check. And you watch your body want to get up, and you go, hey,
Stop.
get over here. You get back into this present moment, and every time you do that, it's a victory. You're executing a will. And most people lose their free will to a program because they do the same thing today as they did yesterday. Their body's on autopilot, and it's dragging them into the same future habitually based on what they did in the past. So now you're sitting there, and it's just a little uncomfortable, and you want to quit, and your body, and you go, no. And you get over here and you bring it back. Now, some people say, I can't meditate, but really, they're actually doing it right. That's a victory too.
Yeah.
And then you do that and you start watching how you're training your body back into the present moment. Then your body says, well, Lewis, it's 8:30 in the morning. This is usually when you watch the news and throw a tirade and get angry.
Right.
And you're sitting here with your eyes closed and you're off schedule. So why don't we just get agitated about anything? So the body starts trying to create images in your mind, so you remember your ex, you remember your problems, so you could feel that agitation. What if you watched your body do that and you said, no. I'm not going to give my power away to the past or that person or that circumstance in my life. You get that body back in the present moment, you lower the volume to that emotion, that's a victory. You're telling the body it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind. Now, that kind of work is tedious in the beginning, but I watch people because when I have them do that, it starts stretching their boundaries. Mm-hmm. The known self, that little box, starts to move into the unknown and they survive. And all of a sudden they're more relaxed in the present moment, the unknown. And they start feeling more satisfied. So now they're more ready to create. So the preparation for the day is to remind yourself of who you no longer want to be. To know thyself, to become so familiar with, the word meditation means to become familiar with. So conscious of your unconscious programs, you're not going to go unconscious. Why? Because you did battle today with that personality that's creating the same personal reality. And if your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, and you want to create a new personal reality, then you got to change your personality. And that's going to mean then you're going to become so conscious of those unconscious programs that you're no longer the program. You're the consciousness observing the program. Disentangling from that is not easy. That's why most people won't do it. That's why they get on their cell phone and say, let me just create a little dopamine by just seeing if I got a text from somebody I like. Then your phone's over there and you're no longer regulating with something outside of you. This is game time. So then if you said, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? With my attention and my intention, I'm going to make that the loudest voice in my head. And if you keep firing and wiring, that hardware is going to become a software program and it's going to be a new voice.
Right.
You installed it. No magic there. The act of closing your eyes and rehearsing who you're going to be
so powerful.
Is installing more hardware. The brain's going to look like you already did it. Now it's no longer in the past. It's primed for the future. Keep doing it, and it's going to become a software program, and you're going to start looking pretty great.
It's an interesting concept because you have to think about this. Why is it that you can give someone a sugar pill, a saline injection, or perform some false surgery or treatment, and a certain percentage of those people will accept, believe, and surrender to the thought without any analysis that they're getting the real substance or real treatment. And they begin to program their autonomic nervous system to make their own pharmacy of chemicals that matches the exact same chemical or treatment that they think they're getting. Now, it says a few things. Number one, it's not the external substance that's doing the healing because it's inert. There's some type of innate capacity for the body to heal, and there's some correlation between the mind and the body. So that pill represents possibility for the person. And so if you think about this, when they see the pill, they're conditioned into thinking that that pill can do something good for them. So in a depression study, for example, 3 out of 4 people that are taking a placebo in a depression study get better. Now that's 75%, which means that when that person sees the pill represents hope or possibility for them. They begin to select a new idea, a new thought, that they could be better, a possibility. It's called a clear intention. Some people will begin to become inspired, enthusiastic, excited, and when you combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, you are changing a person's biology from living in the past to living in the future. And they begin to make their own pharmacy of antidepressants that begins to help them. Now, it's not a one-shot deal, because in those studies, for example, the person who's taking the placebo has to take that pill for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. So every day, then, they're reminding themselves of a new future reality. And that pill represents a symbol. It represents a symbol of hope, a symbol of possibility. And instead of them relating to themselves in a limited way, that they have to resign to the idea that they can't think greater than how they feel in a depression study, or feelings have become the means of thinking, they're actually changing their physiology by thought alone. And the redundancy and the repetition of that cycle begins to select different functions in the nervous system. And your nervous system is the best pharmacy or drug producer in the world, and begins to select new genes and instruct new genes to cause a person's biology to begin to change. And if you keep knocking on the genetic door, there's a good possibility that you can program a gene or upregulate a gene to do something well and downregulate a gene to turn off. And so my interest is in understanding how the placebo works. How does it work? Once you understand how it works, will you be able to teach it? Because do you need the sugar pill in order to move into a new state of being? Or can you teach a person to select an unknown instead of a known, and continuously select that unknown and emotionally embrace that future before the event occurs, so much so that the body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe it's living in that future reality in the present moment. And if the person does that, just like taking the placebo for 6 weeks, alters their state of being every single day, is it possible that that unknown becomes a known, and they begin to change their physiology and biology just by thought alone? You better be willing to have a new experience that is no longer a wishy-washy belief. It has to be a very strong impression in your biology that comes with an accompanying experience that then changes your biology to understand you believe something else. But that's not the end either, because then you have to question from that point, what is the next belief that helps you to understand the next thing? For example, the person in our work who, I'll use a simple example, has a very, very difficult marriage. And her marriage falls apart, her husband was abusive, and lived by the stress hormones for an extended period of time. Of course, all her energy is going for some threat in her external environment. She has no energy in her internal environment for growth and repair. No energy for long-term building projects. The body is in vigilance. It's always anxious. She's anticipating something bad happening all the time, and she's got food allergies to everything. She's allergic to her environment. She comes to the event, she does the work, it takes her 3 months, and all of a sudden, in one event, she has a breakthrough, and she's eating anything she wants. Now, she's changed her belief about her past, because she's no longer saying, I am this way because of my relationship with my husband. See, because when you say, I am this way because I had an abusive father, I am this way because I had a difficult marriage, I am this way because I got fired from my job, what you're saying is, I haven't changed since that event emotionally. And so now you're viewing your future through the lens of the past. When you overcome that emotional state, a memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. Now you're ready to create a new future, because if you're still attached to the emotion, you're still attached to the past, and you can't create a future. So all of a sudden now the person has a transformation. She has a shift. She knows that she's liberated from that anxiety. She feels it. And as a result of it, in a matter of moments, Ben, her biology reorganizes to a new mind. And now I'm watching her eat pizza, I'm watching her eat a hamburger, she's laughing, and it's sustained. But that's not the end. Because if she's healed herself, then the next question is, I understand the physics and biology of what I've done. Is it possible if I heal myself that I can heal another person? If people are really, really believing that their astrological sign determines their destiny, then they will look for, based on their perception, the correlations that are equal to their belief system. I don't particularly believe that because I'm born at a certain time under a certain house that has anything to do with me creating the life that I want to have, right? So many people will, though, and because they do, they'll select, like, oh, I saw 11:11 on the clock. Well, you've seen 2:36 on the clock and 4:18 on the clock, but you're looking for 11:11. Well, then that's your reality, because that's where your attention is, right? So I don't subscribe to that, but I respect that, because that person is going to keep that belief until it no longer serves them, and they're either going to evolve their belief or they're not. And if they don't, so be it. But if they do, they're going to realize sooner or later it's not working for them. I have certain beliefs right now that I honestly am questioning, that I still think are limited beliefs. But in order for me to change those beliefs, I'm going to have to come out of my resting state, have to step out into the unknown and really check to see and execute in a very different way. I can tell you that there is a strong majority of people who are still taking the placebo, who are still making their changes. Because we know that, like in a Parkinson's study, you give Parkinson's patients a placebo and more than 50% of them, their intention tremors go away. But if you take those people after they're making 200 times the amount of dopamine by getting a saline injection or an injection of distilled water, they're making their own dopamine, and Parkinson's is a deficiency in dopamine. When they return back to their life, and they see their caregiver and they play chess with their friends and they see their wife or sleep in the same bed or whatever it is, their personal reality is creating their personality, reminding them who they are. Their disease comes back because they're back to the same identity. And that's how strong the environment is. So our students who continue to do the work are still sustaining and producing more changes. Wow. Now that's the majority of our students, because our students are committed. But we do have students that don't make it. Why? Because we're doing something that is unknown. We're doing something. Not everybody is going to make that. Like, not everybody's going to finish the mile. Not everybody's going to make the journey to the top of the mountain. You know, it's a journey. And so we ask people then, the ones that have had chronic diseases or conditions, the majority of them, by the way, are still doing exceptionally well. Some of them have had a disease return. And what we have them do is measure. Every 3 months or 6 months, you measure. Why? Because this is not about denial. This is about knowing. So the people who have had some conditions return, we ask them to measure, and then we ask them to go at it again. And if their values aren't changing, we ask them to intervene with other medical means or whatever they need to improve. So the ones that have had the healings, though, the majority of them are still doing exceptionally well. Some of them that stop taking the placebo or they lose their job, they lose their mother, they lose their life, and they get stressed, and they go back to their old self. Well, it's a matter of time when we're going to start seeing some of those conditions return.
People come to our work for all kinds of reasons. Some people, like you said, have health conditions. Some people want to create a new job, a new career, a new relationship. Some people are craving a mystical experience. Some people just want to understand life from a different perspective. And I think science has become the contemporary language of mysticism. I think it's science that demystifies the mystical. Sciences point the finger at possibility. But science, in a sense, creates community. So people come for all kinds of reasons. And what I've learned in the last year or so is that
what people really want is wholeness. Because when we want something, we're in separation or in lack. And so when we started experimenting with doing different scientific measurements, one of the things we started to notice is that when a person somehow connects to something greater, and that has a influence on their nervous system, once you learn that skill of self-regulation and being able to experience a greater level of wholeness, that if you can create from wholeness instead of separation or lack, you can produce greater effects on the nature of reality. There's no separation between cause and effect. Your thoughts create experiences when you're in oneness. What happens between cause and effect is called time. So why not practice shortening time or the interval between cause, the thought, and the effect, the experience? And when you start seeing something appear in your life, you start getting more kind, more caring, more loving, more conscious, more present, because you feel more whole. I want them to learn the formula on how to heal. I want them to learn the formula on how to create reality. I want them to learn the formula that there is a door to other dimensions that they can create independent of any exogenous substance and release latent systems in the brain that causes them to realize they're not a linear being living a linear life. They're a dimensional being living a dimensional life, and it only takes one of those experiences where you have an alteration in your identity that you can't go back to being the same person again. Once you can get beyond your attention on your body, get beyond your attention on different objects and people and things at certain times and places in your environment, no longer anticipating the next moment or living in the past, when a person can get transcendental beyond their identity, they start passing through an eye of the needle. And that is their connection to that unifying field, that invisible field of energy that actually is connecting everything physical and material. And you can't use your senses when you're there. In fact, when you are there, there's a whole nother set of rules to execute in. There's no place to go. Every thought has a frequency, and being able to create from that place is why we're here. I give people numerous opportunities to get beyond themselves, numerous opportunities to connect with themselves. I want them to get frustrated. I want them to get impatient. I want them to get overly analytical, because that's the end of their belief. And then finally, when they finally make up their mind to let go and just do it, and they run into that feeling, they run into that experience, they're all in. They don't want a sports car anymore. They want that, whatever that was. And if it comes with a transcendental moment, when they come back to their senses from that inner experience, their spectrum of reality is broadened. They're seeing things they had never seen before because their brain wasn't wired to see it, but it didn't come from the environment, it came from their inner environment. That transcendental moment now is producing a feeling, a frequency that is so unusual. It's so much joy, so much bliss, so much ecstasy. You can't go back to being the same person after that. The illusion of limitation begins to change, and now all you want to do is you crave the unknown. And when you start seeing the gap between cause and effect, thought and experience closing down, you're moving closer to the divine. And when that happens, all the things you thought you want, you no longer want, because the overcoming process leading to who you become, nobody can take that away from you. I now know that if I can speak it in a way that nothing is left to conjecture, nothing is left to superstition, nothing is left to dogma. They know exactly what they're doing and why. And the moment you know the what and the why, the how starts to get easier. So I will deliver concepts, ideas, mix different forms of science to create a model of understanding. So if they can turn the person next to them between the two of them and build a model of understanding, they're making their brain fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. They're changing their mind. So then if they can get their behaviors to match their intentions and they have a new experience, the brain makes a chemical.
And that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. When you start feeling unlimited, when you start feeling worthy, when you are having an experience that causes you to be more in love with life. So when you're at that point where you're so whole that you don't care what people think about you, when you're so happy with yourself that you're free, you don't care what you look like, you're just happy with you, man, that's freedom for people. That's so much freedom. How much could we get done if we had an infinite amount of time? And in the realm of time-space, there's no past, there is no future, it's all happening now. And it only takes one experience of entering that place that you cannot see the world the same way again. People, many times when they gather knowledge and information, the information causes them to become conscious of what they were once unconscious to. And when you have a greater level of consciousness, you see possibilities. And in a sense, you're energized by information. You're enlightened, you're filled with light in some way, and you see possibilities that you haven't seen before. Now, getting beyond the analytical mind is one of the main purposes of meditation. And I can tell you that the analytical mind is always going to talk us out of possibility because it is fascinated on trying to predict what's going to happen next. And there's a stigma we have in our minds that if you lead with too much passion in your life, you're going to lose your life. And if you're working on your anger and frustration, and I'm working on my fear and anxiety and my judgment, and I'm taking care of me, and you emerge in that heart of yours, and I emerge in that heart, we are going to be like-minded. We're going to be connected by that invisible field. So then, do you need the sugar pill? Do you need the saline injection? Do you need to perform some false surgery or procedure? Because all they're doing is marrying a clear intention with the elevated emotion of optimism, of possibility, of inspiration. They're changing their state of being. Giving the person the pill every day. Most of them thought they were getting the actual substance because they felt so much better. Every day, changing your state of being. Doing it for 8 weeks without a sugar pill. Just marrying a clear intention and elevated emotion, changing your state of being without any exogenous substance. Sooner or later, you start feeling good. You practice feeling good every day for 8 weeks, you're going to start feeling good. It's just going to be the side effect. It just makes sense. You get a group of people, 1,000 people in a room. By the middle of the event, everybody is locked into their heart. They know how to execute. And I say, get in that heart of yours, and on that energy, lay the thought that the people in the front of the room, on that energy, that their lives be enriched, that their bodies be healed, that their dreams come true. The collective then moves as one mind, as one heart, and the collective begins to entrain the weak. The collective begins to care for the other ones that are falling behind, not because they want to run to their dream, but because they want to help people realize their dream, because that's important to them. You can't not care. You can't not be present. You can't not be kind. And you see a man show up in a wheelchair from a stroke, completely disabled. His daughter wheeled him around that whole event. And he had a profound moment the very last day. And he went back, she wheeled him into the house, he could walk. We contribute to the living organism. You made a difference. You changed somebody's life. That's why we do it, for that feeling. You keep doing it. That's going to be a common feeling. You're going to get really sensitive to some energy, to some feeling. That's what it's about. They get it. All they had to do was open their heart for somebody else. That's how it opens. I want them to be able to execute with the tools to be able to create the life they want. And as you get closer and closer to source, to singularity, to wholeness, it's no longer about you, it's about us, it's about community. And that's when we begin to emerge as something greater. People always ask me, how do I create the person of my dreams that I want in my life? And I always say, take out a piece of paper, write down everything you want in that person, and then become it. Because so many people have so many interesting definitions about what they think love is. Some people have it in terms of need. Some people have it in terms of sexuality. Some people have it in terms of control and dominance and success. So those are different experiences that really don't lead to this concept called love. How come I can't create the relationship that I want? Let me ask you a question. Would you go out with you? So I have a couple theories about relationships that I think are really important, and I use the same exact principles with my life. First of all, I will never work in a relationship, and I don't think anybody should work in a relationship. I think if you're working in a relationship, something is not clicking, something is not right. But if you bring your best, and the person that you're with brings their best, and you celebrate your life together, then there's constructive interference, there's growth, there's energy. If you're not there and you need a mirror or a reflection, then it's good to ask, am I missing something? Am I not seeing myself in some way? And then there's a healthy conversation when you invite it. But if you're not invited to contribute your opinion, then it's better off that you don't. So people always say, I want a loving relationship, but what they really want is happiness, really. So we do these meditations to create love in our lives. And it could be love in familial relationships with your siblings, it could be with your parents, it could be with your friends, or it could be with a significant other. If thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge in the quantum field, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends a signal out, and the feeling is the magnetic field that draws the event back to you. So if you're not in a place where you're in love with life, or in love with yourself, or practicing diminishing your emotional reactions to certain people or conditions in your life, and you're living in anger or hostility or judgment or fear, and you want a loving relationship, there is no magnetic field for you to draw that to you. And in fact, if you say to me, well, it's that person or that circumstance that's caused me to feel this way, then I would say that person or that circumstance is controlling the way you feel and the way you think. And anything that controls the way we feel and the way we think, we are victims to. So most people are unconsciously responding to the conditions in their environment, experiencing emotions that are derived from the hormones of stress. Those emotions cause us to feel separate from our dreams. They heighten our senses, so if we can't see them, it doesn't exist. The threat or the danger puts us in emergency mode. Your response to the environment is actually weakening your organism. It's weakening your response, is actually weakening the body. Then you will be, as a victim, more vulnerable to the conditions in your environment, whether they're large or small. And I'm talking about microorganisms as well. So if you wanted a true relationship where it was fundamentally based on this concept called love, if you could truly begin to practice trading those survival emotions every day for elevated emotions, and you practiced opening your heart, it's a skill that has to take place where you move out of survival. So people say, well, I can't open my heart. I can't feel love. And I say, well, what do you practice feeling? Because whatever you practice feeling, you're feeling most of the time. And that feeling could be guilt, but you're so used to it, you wouldn't even know it's guilt. It just feels like you.
Are most people practicing a feeling, or are they just reacting to how they feel?
They're reacting to their external environment. So if they have an unhappy thought, they feel unhappy. If they have a judgmental thought, it produces chemicals that makes you feel polarized. The stronger the emotions that we feel from the problems and conditions in our life, the more altered we feel inside of us, the more we pay attention to what's causing it outside of us. If you have an event in your life, an experience in your life that has a strong emotional charge to it, and you don't feel like your normal self, you feel this alarm system switch on. You're going to narrow your focus on the cause, and the brain's going to take a snapshot. So then what people don't know is that every time they think about that event, they're producing the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event was occurring. So the highly charged event is actually producing the emotion, and the body is so objective that it doesn't know the difference between the real experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that the person is fabricating by thought alone. The body's believing. All you need is an image and an emotion, a thought and a feeling, a stimulus and a response, and you're conditioning your body emotionally into the past. The memory's just not in the brain now, it's in the body. So the problem is that it becomes a subconscious program. It's no longer a conscious process. The body has been conditioned into resentment, into unhappiness, into fear, anxiety, whatever it is. So back to our concept of bringing love into your life. So you say to that person, okay, open your heart, and they're gonna say, are you kidding me? I was hurt. I'm not gonna do that. Let me see your cards first. And once I see your cards, then I'll open up a little bit. In that state of survival, the research shows that the long-term effects of those stress hormones are pushing the genetic buttons that are creating disease. The body can't live in emergency mode for that period of time. So in a sense, the person is making themselves sick by thought alone. The problem is now the body is conditioned into the past, and it's the mind. All of this energy is stored in the body, and now the person has to leave their unhappiness and step out into the unknown. They have to get out of the familiar feelings that has defined them. So they'll say, I can't really feel joy. I can't really feel love. And what they're really saying is, I've been conditioning my body emotionally so much into the past that I can't feel anything else other than what I know. People say anger, fear, those are altered states. The survival chemicals are actually knocking your brain and body out of balance. You're out of balance in that moment. And if you keep doing that, the imbalance is now the new balance. And now you're altered emotionally. So back to the concept of love. So the person can theoretically, intellectually, philosophically say, oh, I want this type of person. She's got to be this way. He's got to look this way. He's got to be like this. And they're basically saying, I want something that represents all the things that I no longer want. And so they're creating with their brain and mind, which is perfect. The problem is that if you can't feel the emotion of your future, your manifestation of love before it's made manifest, waiting for the outer environment to change, that's cause and effect. We're waiting for something to happen. If you're feeling the lack and the emptiness, then you're keeping your relationship at arm's length because you don't have the magnetic field to draw to you. So can you teach your body emotionally what the future will feel like before it's made manifest? That means you can't wait for your relationship to feel love. You have to reverse that battleship and understand feeling love and practice getting so present in the moment that you're not anticipating the next moment or trying to predict the future.
Most of our thoughts and feelings come from our past experiences. They come from our memories. In fact, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of all the things you've learned and experienced to date. It's an artifact. And when you have an experience, when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your 5 senses plug you into the external environment. And as your brain is processing all of this vital sensory data, all of that information rushes back to the brain. And when it reaches the brain, it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks, to string into patterns, to reflect their interaction with their external environment. The moment those neurons organize into patterns, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And so experiences tend to create more long-term memories because it patterns or stamps or embosses networks of neurons into very specific patterns, and then the emotional quotient helps us to remember the event. The end product of experience, of course, is the emotion, and it causes us to feel certain ways. You can remember where you were on 9/11. You can tell me who you were with, what time of day it was, what you were doing, because whatever you were seeing in that moment or hearing in that moment changed how you were feeling. And the moment you felt altered or you felt differently, significantly, your brain perked up and you paid attention to whatever caused that. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. So then most of our thoughts and feelings tend to be within the neural circuitry of the past and the emotions of the past chemically. if you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, and you have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, that cycle of thinking and feeling creates what's called an attitude. If you have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some pretty bad feelings, you'll say, I have a pretty bad attitude today. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, then attitudes are just shortened states of being. You can feel good in the morning, you can feel bad in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, and you begin to string attitudes together, when you combine an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you start to form what's called beliefs. Now, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And because beliefs are based on past experiences, then the very boundaries of our beliefs are how we feel. And so when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. I think there's a strong intellectual division going on in the world right now, because some people are holding on to old paradigms and old beliefs. And look, if we're measuring normal, we're going to get normal. I mean, for years, the idea that you couldn't grow new brain cells or couldn't change the brain in some way, that was a belief. And you know why? Because the scientist that was doing the experiment was studying rodents in an unchanging environment. How could there ever be any new connections or new circuitry or new brain cells if there's no new experiences? So I think in the age of information, in the age of technology, ignorance is a choice. And people are beginning to go, hey, I don't need my doctor to tell me about this. I can get on the internet and read it. Hey, I'm going to read a book on quantum physics and I'm going to ask the mysterious questions. I'm going to step outside of convention myself. So once you step outside of convention, you will be considered foolhardy or insane until you're able to produce some type of change. Then you're considered a saint, a holy man, a mystic, a genius. Dare to be original. So I think the camp is divided in a very big way. That's the reason why I'm doing all the measurements. Yeah. Because I want people to understand that the person that healed themselves of that condition, that traumatic brain injury, I want to show you that their brain is better. They're not just saying, I feel better. No, they are better. I want them to see that. Now, they didn't do that with a drug. They didn't do that with a therapy. They didn't do that with anything except by thought alone. And they made those biological changes. So, to answer the question, the camp is divided in many ways. The old paradigms, and then the new understandings and the new paradigms. And then there's this little kind of bridge in between, and we're only as good as the people that are willing to execute it. In other words, you got to be skilled at this, right? You got to be skilled at this. So if you're not skilled at it, we're not going to see any changes. So imagine 500 people or 450 people coming to an event, a workshop, and we are going to help them cross that river and to become conscious of their unconscious thoughts. You know, the ones that say, you can't, it's too hard, this will never happen, I can't change, I'm too this, I'm too old, I'm too that. Get beyond what their habits are, what they say unconsciously. Do they complain? Do they blame? Do they make excuses? Do they feel sorry for themselves? It's a program. They talk about others. Then look at their emotional states. Oh my God, I've been guilty for the last 30 years. I didn't even know I was guilty. It just felt like me. I've been unworthy. I didn't even know I was unworthy. It just felt like who I am. And all of a sudden, they start becoming conscious of that. And then they start creating a new change for themselves. And one by one, you start seeing these breakthroughs. You start measuring those breakthroughs. You get people on the stage talk about their breakthroughs, show their brain scan, show their heart rate monitor, show the energy change. And I guarantee you, just like an infection can create a disease in a community, I believe that wellness can be as infectious as disease. And you start seeing traumatic changes happening in a small community of people who are outside of the conditioning of their environment. The science has to be done to measure it, but the measurements are only as good as our students. And if they're not doing the work, if they're not developing the ability to sustain brainwave states, if they're not getting beyond their analytical mind, because what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And if a person doesn't get beyond their analytical mind, they'll still think within their belief. And I've measured enough brains to tell you is that when you think within your belief, or you think within those limited emotions, you are going to make your brain worse, without a doubt. It's only when you transcend that analytical mind that you start falling in to those subconscious programs and you begin to step into the autonomic nervous system where you can change your chemistry and your biology. So then if our students aren't good at doing that, then it's still a philosophical concept, pie in the sky principles. But what we want to do is we want to give people the knowledge, the information, and blend the sciences of possibility, whether it's quantum physics or neuroplasticity or neuroendocrinology or epigenetics or whatever it is, hormonal changes, psychoneuroimmunology. We want to give them the information and have them reason it. We want them to be able to turn to someone next to them and explain what they just learned so they wire it in there. We want to give them the instruction and have them review the instruction, and then we want to put them into the experience. Not everybody is going to have the experience, but all we need is a few. And if that person or a series of people have that experience, that transformation, and we measure that transformation, that's more information to teach transformation the next time, because I can understand what took place. So our work is only as good as our students' ability to regulate and change those states. But I do know that if you give people the opportunity and they have enough times in their environment to apply it, you'll start seeing those transformations occur. And now we're stepping outside the paradigm of the human beings are limited, they're powerless, they need these external things to take care of them. I think it's time that we start taking a little bit more responsibility for these things and seeing if we're able to do it in a practical, measurable way. An attitude and attitude and attitude are shortened states of being. And you combine them together then a belief then, the cycle of thinking, feeling over time, creates a subconscious state of being. So all beliefs are subconscious states of being. We have beliefs about God, about spirituality, about health, about relationships, about love. And all of those are based on our past experiences, but the majority of those beliefs, we don't even know that we believe them because we think they're true, because they're not functioning primarily in the conscious mind. So then, if you take a belief, and you stack them together, you start to form what's called perceptions. And perceptions have everything to do with the relationships we have, the things we create, the behaviors we demonstrate, and even the choices we make in our relationships. So then, why is that important? Because then, if beliefs are subconscious states of being, and you're stringing beliefs together, then most people are viewing their life through the lens of the past, unconsciously. And they are filling in reality. They're seeing reality. They're filling it in from their past memory. We know this to be true because they did an amazing experiment where they took a group of people and they had them wear these lenses. And the lenses were divided in half. And when they looked to one side, they saw one color. And they looked to another side, they saw another color. And they said to them, okay, well, wear these glasses every day for 2 weeks. Take your kids to school, do all the things you do at work, go shopping, work out, live your life. At the end of 2 weeks, they brought those people back into the lab and they said, look to the left, what color do you see? So we don't see a color. Look to the right, what color do you see? We don't see a color. Now, it says a couple things. Number one, the eyes don't see. The brain sees. But more emphatically important is that those people were filling in their external reality based on their memory in their brain. If they were truly seeing, they would be seeing those colors, right? So then, in our perceptions then, we are overlaying our future, we're overlaying the present moment with our memory of the past. And so then, that then begins to diminish possibility. And it begins to close down the way that we can begin to navigate and function in our lives.
People always ask me, how do I create the person of my dreams that I want in my life? And I always say, take out a piece of paper, write down everything you want in that person, and then become it. Because so many people have so many interesting definitions about what they think love is. Some people have it in terms of need. Some people have it in terms of sexuality. Some people have it in terms of control and dominance and success. So those are different experiences that really don't lead to this concept called love. How come I can't create the relationship that I want? Let me ask you a question. Would you go out with you? So I have a couple theories about relationships that I think are really important, and I use the same exact principles with my life. First of all, I will never work in a relationship, and I don't think anybody should work in a relationship. I think if you're working in a relationship, something is not clicking, something is not right. But if you bring your best, and the person that you're with brings their best, and you celebrate your life together, then there's constructive interference, there's growth, there's energy. If you're not there and you need a mirror or a reflection, then it's good to ask, am I missing something? Am I not seeing myself in some way? And then there's a healthy conversation when you invite it. But if you're not invited to contribute your opinion, then it's better off that you don't. So people always say, I want a loving relationship, but what they really want is happiness, really. So we do these meditations to create love in our lives. And it could be love in familial relationships with your siblings, it could be with your parents, it could be with your friends, or it could be with a significant other. If thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge in the quantum field, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends a signal out, and the feeling is the magnetic field that draws the event back to you. So if you're not in a place where you're in love with life, or in love with yourself, or practicing diminishing your emotional reactions to certain people or conditions in your life, and you're living in anger or hostility or judgment or fear, and you want a loving relationship, there is no magnetic field for you to draw that to you. And in fact, if you say to me, well, it's that person or that circumstance that's caused me to feel this way, then I would say that person or that circumstance is controlling the way you feel and the way you think. And anything that controls the way we feel and the way we think, we are victims to. So most people are unconsciously responding to the conditions in their environment, experiencing emotions that are derived from the hormones of stress. Those emotions cause us to feel separate from our dreams. They heighten our senses, so if we can't see them, it doesn't exist. The threat or the danger puts us in emergency mode. Your response to the environment is actually weakening your organism. It's weakening your response, is actually weakening the body. Then you will be, as a victim, more vulnerable to the conditions in your environment, whether large or small. And I'm talking about microorganisms as well. So if you wanted a true relationship where it was fundamentally based on this concept called love, if you could truly begin to practice trading those survival emotions every day for elevated emotions, and you practiced opening your heart, it's a skill that has to take place where you move out of survival. So people say to me, well, I can't open my heart. I can't feel love. And I say, well, what do you practice feeling? Because whatever you practice feeling, you're feeling most of the time. And that feeling could be guilt, but you're so used to it, you wouldn't even know it's guilt. It just feels like you.
Are most people practicing a feeling, or are they just reacting to how they feel?
They're reacting to their external environment. So if they have an unhappy thought, they feel unhappy. If they have a judgmental thought, it produces chemicals that makes you feel polarized. The stronger the emotions that we feel from the problems and conditions in our life, the more altered we feel inside of us, the more we pay attention to what's causing it outside of us. If you have an event in your life, an experience in your life that has a strong emotional charge to it, and you don't feel like your normal self, you feel this alarm system switch on. You're going to narrow your focus on the cause, and the brain's going to take a snapshot. So then what people don't know is that every time they think about that event, they're producing the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event was occurring. So the highly charged event is actually producing the emotion, and the body is so objective that it doesn't know the difference between the real experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that the person is fabricating by thought alone. The body's believing. All you need is an image and an emotion, a thought and a feeling, a stimulus and a response, and you're conditioning your body emotionally into the past. The memory's just not in the brain now, it's in the body. So the problem is that it becomes a subconscious program. It's no longer a conscious process. The body has been conditioned into resentment, into unhappiness, into fear, anxiety, whatever it is. So back to our concept of bringing love into your life. So you say to that person, okay, open your heart, and they're gonna say, are you kidding me? I was hurt. I'm not gonna do that. Let me see your cards first. And once I see your cards, then I'll open up a little bit. In that state of survival, the research shows that the long-term effects of those stress hormones are pushing the genetic buttons that are creating disease. The body can't live in emergency mode for that period of time. So in a sense, the person is making themselves sick by thought alone. The problem is now the body is conditioned into the past, and it's the mind. All of this energy is stored in the body, and now the person has to leave their unhappiness and step out into the unknown. They have to get out of the familiar feelings that has defined them. So they'll say, I can't really feel joy. I can't really feel love. And what they're really saying is, I've been conditioning my body emotionally so much into the past that I can't feel anything else other than what I know. People say anger, fear, those are altered states. The survival chemicals are actually knocking your brain and body out of balance. You're out of balance in that moment. And if you keep doing that, the imbalance is now the new balance. And now you're altered emotionally. So back to the concept of love. So the person can theoretically, intellectually, philosophically say, oh, I want this type of person. She's got to be this way. He's got to look this way. He's got to be like this. And they're basically saying, I want something that represents all the things that I no longer want. And so they're creating with their brain and mind, which is perfect. The problem is that if you can't feel the emotion of your future, your manifestation of love before it's made manifest, waiting for the outer environment to change, that's cause and effect. We're waiting for something to happen. If you're feeling the lack and the emptiness, then you're keeping your relationship at arm's length because you don't have the magnetic field to draw to you. So can you teach your body emotionally what the future will feel like before it's made manifest? That means you can't wait for your relationship to feel love. You have to reverse that battleship and understand feeling love and practice getting so present in the moment that you're not anticipating the next moment or trying to predict the future.